Hi, this is Tutor Nick P, and this is lesson 480. The lesson today is the difference between think about and think of. Okay, if somebody wants a screenshot, do it right now. All right, let's get into it. This is actually a tough one. There is a lot of crossover between these two. And the situations in which there is crossover, from the research I did anyway, most experts say you use think about when you are considering something more deeply or concentrating on it, or especially if you're trying to make a decision about it, you're a little more likely to be using think about. Think of is used more like when you imagine things or the idea just recently came to your head. But there could be situations where you're using either of these two. But again, you're more likely to think about when it's more deeply and think of when it just recently came. All right, now I've separated them because each of these have different uses. Sometimes there's a use where you're probably only going to use this one, and sometimes there's a use where you're only going to use that one. All right, let's start with the think about. We got three uses of think about here. To think about doing something in the future. Right, now this is one where there could be crossover. But let's look at the first example we have here. I was thinking about taking a vacation for a while now. Now, if you add for a while now, it probably means you were thinking about it more deeply. And you're also thinking about your decision. I may book tomorrow. So you're probably a little more likely to say, think about in this situation. But are there some times where you're saying, I'm thinking of taking a vacation? Yeah, it could be. But again, if you were putting more time into it and you were thinking deeply enough that you're ready for a decision, probably about would be more common. All right, let's look at number 2 here. To consider someone or something in relation to something else. All right, let's look. If you accept this job overseas, you need to think about how it affects your family. Now, this one you probably want to think deeply about. So you're probably a little more likely to use about in this situation. Think of sounds like, you're just maybe expressing the idea for the first time, but think about is probably better because you're going to have to think more deeply. This is your family. How will it affect them? All right, the third one here, to recall or to reflect. All right, let's look at the first example. I keep thinking about how he acted today. Well, again, if you say you keep doing it, probably we're thinking more often. So you're probably a little more likely to use about in this situation. I am thinking about whether I made the right decision or not. Again, this one sounds like you've been going over in your mind about it. So a little more likely to be using think about because, you're like, did I make the right decision? Didn't I make the right decision? So you're probably thinking more deeply. About is probably going to be more common. All right. Now here we have 5 uses of think of. Here's the first one. To consider the well-being of someone or something. This one's a little bit more about caring about someone. I think of is probably more common. I only did it because I was thinking of her, like you were thinking about them, like caring about them in a certain way. I didn't want her to feel left out. Could you possibly sometimes say I was thinking about her? Yeah, but when you're thinking more about caring about them, I think of is more likely. All right, let's continue. To hold a particular opinion about someone or something. All right, here's another one where think of is probably more likely. I think highly of her. Yeah. Now, in this case, you wouldn't say, I think about her highly. That just sounds weird. So here you're expressing your opinion. You think highly of someone, or you don't think highly of someone. So of would probably be more common in this situation. Or really, you would only use of in this situation. About wouldn't fit in at all. What do you think of that movie? Well, if you're just really trying to get their opinion, you probably use of. Could someone say, what do you think about that movie? Yeah, but it probably would suggest that you may have discussed this before, and you may have talked about it before, and you may be thinking longer about it. Okay, to bring into existence. Well, this is kind of like, with the imagining one, again, think of is a little more common. I just thought of that idea. All right. This one probably would be, because you're not thinking deeply of it. You just thought of the idea, it just came to your head. So think of probably should be used with this one. To consider something as a possible plan. All right. I was thinking of taking tomorrow off. Okay. Again, if it's just tomorrow, the next day, this thought may have just come to your head, so you might use think of. But again, this is one where there could be a crossover. What I was thinking about taking tomorrow off. You might hear somebody say that. Again, it may imply that you were thinking more deeply, though. And number 5, to recall something or remember something. Remember, both of them could be used for recall. Every time I hear this song, I think of my ex-girlfriend. Well, this sounds like it just popped in your head, so you're probably a little more likely to use think of. About, again, sounds like you put more time into it, or you're thinking deeper about it. But there could be a little crossover with that one, too. Okay, I hope it was useful. Hope I gave you some points where you might clearly see where you're a little more likely to use one or the other. And there are cases where you really could use either one or the other. But again, if it just popped into your head or you just thought of it recently, of is probably a little more likely. And if you're thinking about it deeply and decisions, it's probably think about is more likely. Anyway, I hope you got it. I hope it was informative. Thank you for your time. Bye-bye.